Well, our long national wait is officially over. We are now here and ready to roll with so much excitement and so many reasons to be thrilled about the return of sports after all of the time that there has not been sports, and in particular after all the time there's not been football. Since the Kansas City Chiefs walked off the field as your Super Bowl champs back in February, we have now returned, and we have got the Texans and the Chiefs going head-to-head, ready to roll with a Thursday night football game to kick off the return of the NFL. Now, there's lots of drama off the field. There's probably going to be, unfortunately, I believe anyway, I think one of the top stories coming out of everything that has to do with the game tonight is going to be what happens before the game, how do players behave, what happens when the anthem comes on. All of this, right, is going to be covered with a fine-tooth comb, and I unfortunately think come Friday it's probably going to take away from what happens in the actual game itself. How woke is the NFL going to go? How long are they going to stay woke? All of these different questions, I think, are going to be at the very essence of the decision-making that is going into this game. But how good does it feel to have the NFL back once and for all? A lot of people out there told us that it was never going to happen. A lot of people said, hey, this is a season that will not take place. If you go back and you look at the Corona Bros in the media, there were lots of people saying, oh, my God, how in the world is the NFL going to have the draft? Oh, my God, how is the NFL going to have free agency? Oh, my God, how in the world is the NFL ever going to be able to play a football season during the coronavirus? Well, the NFL has found a way to get it done, and I think they deserve the utmost credit for that reality. And so, as we are rolling into the NFL schedule, I am just thrilled that we have found a way to get back to NFL football. And if you consider this weekend what may be going on with the Big 12, the ACC, all the college football, all the NFL taking place on Thursday, Sunday, Monday, this is going to be a buffet of football excess that many of us have been waiting for as long as we can possibly imagine, and particularly because since the Super Bowl back in February, it just feels like it's been like 10 years. I mean, when you consider all the things that have happened since the Chiefs walked off the field, found a way to come storming back, sorry 49er fans, and lock in a victory, it just feels like it has been so long since that took place. It's exciting to be ready to roll again. We are going to give you our picks with the season returning. There are lots of reasons for excitement associated with the league coming back. Let me bring in the crew, but I've got a little bit of trepidation, maybe even a lot, of what exactly is going to go on before the game actually happens and how ridiculous it may look on the field with all the protests and everything that's going to surround it. Are you as nervous as I am, Danny G, that like we're not going to be able to have just football and come tomorrow all the storyline is going to be the ridiculousness that happened as opposed to the actual game itself?
If you feel like you might be offended, tune in 10, 15 minutes after the start time. How about that?
I think it's possible, but I mean, I don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, there are going to be names on helmets, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, that Celtics game with that Raptors double OT win that we experienced last night, when I was watching that amazing basketball come down first off to those crazy 3 consecutive plays at the end of regulation, and then the craziness at the end of the first overtime, and then the extra craziness at the end of the double overtime. Not one time during any of that did I think, oh my God, they have statements on the back of their jerseys.
I did.
You did?
Yeah, I can't not see it. I mean, I watch, the end of NBA games when, they're decided. And it's impossible for me to watch the sport, even when it's entertaining. Even last night, I watched it last night, and I was like, man, this would be so much better if the NBA was just a basketball league instead of every single time somebody turns, I look at the back of their jersey, and instead of seeing their name, I see some sort of political statement. I see it every single time somebody turns, a lot of times because, like if you don't watch the NBA every single minute of a season, and it's not like I've watched the Raptors without Kawhi be playing and everything else. I mean, there are times I'm like, oh, wait, who's this guy again? I know all the stars, but there are lots of people on NBA teams, even in the middle of the playoffs, where I'm like, oh, I can't remember who that dude is. And yeah, the back of the jerseys. For me, it doesn't matter how good the game is. I am constantly aware of the fact that it just feels like a political advertisement to me, the entire NBA game. It doesn't matter. Even the game. The game was good. I was watching last night. I didn't care who won between the Raptors and the Celtics because I had money on the Celtics to close out the series. So, I was rooting for the Celtics because I wanted them to win on the money line.
Well,
and
plus you have to deal with Bonetta today on the TV show.
Well, yeah, right. So I got to hear about how great Canada is again because the Raptors are still alive. But yeah. I was watching it, from the perspective of a gambler with money on it. It's not like I'm affiliated with the Celtics or the Raptors otherwise. And it was an entertaining game. But yeah, it's impossible for me to not notice the political statements being made by the NBA, even in the middle of a good game.
Well, how did you get over the MLB opening day? Because
they don't have statements on the jerseys.
True.
And they don't have statements on the baseball field.
But you were critical after the first
and
game.
Every commercial of Major League Baseball is not a social justice warrior commercial that happens during the NBA. So it doesn't I don't think the bigger issue for Major League Baseball to me is there are no fans present, and that takes me back to every time I get a look into the crowd, I'm like, this is crazy. There should be baseball fans in the stadium. So, I'm constantly thinking when I watch a Major League Baseball game too, and, you have the cardboard cutouts or you've got the totally empty stadium or whatever it is, I'm constantly thinking, because I was down at the Atlanta Braves this past weekend, there's no reason at all for the Major League Baseball stadium in Atlanta, among other places, not to be open, right? If I can go to a restaurant that is literally in the stadium, right? You enter one side of the restaurant from the outside of the stadium. The other side is closed, right? So you can't go through to the other side. If the restaurant in the stadium is open, how is the stadium not open? Right? And so, that I will think about during the course of baseball. But yeah, I can't. And I think if the NFL goes full on woke and I have to see statements on jerseys or statements on helmets or whatever it is, and I don't know what it's going to look like. I think it's going to be impossible not to think about that for me during the course of the game. And I think the majority of fans are like me. It's impossible. If you're a hardcore NBA fan, all right, maybe you're so committed to the league you don't care about the social justice elements, but their ratings have tanked. And I think it's because the average sports fan is like me. I saw this stat. We wrote about it at Outkick. Gallup does a poll of how much people like sports. And in the space of the last year, sports have gone from an overall net 20 positive, meaning when you ask people about sports and athletes and everything else, the average person has a 20-point positive thought about sports, to a negative 10. They've lost 30 points in how much they are liked during a time when they should have been, I think, a national salvation because people are so desperate for something fun to watch. They've been cooped up in their houses. They've got fans have. They've got a desperate need for new entertainment. Athletes have decided to get incredibly political for the first time and most aggressively in our lives. And as a result, they're a lot less liked. As a group. And I think that's an issue that will linger for sports for years and years to come. And I think it will linger the most in the NBA because I think they've gotten the most woke. So, yeah, last night, even during a good ending, double overtime game between the Celtics and the Raptors, I was like, this is a fraction as enjoyable to me as it would be if they were just playing basketball. And I think there are a lot of people who are like me out there. And by the way, a lot of those people won't even watch. So, I say that I am constantly aware of, hey, they're making a political statement. I think there are lots of people who are like, screw it, I'm not even going to put this on. So, yeah. I mean, what about you, Dub? Like, when you watch, even if it's an entertaining NBA game, are you also constantly aware? Like, I feel like I'm being lectured to because the statements on the jerseys, basketball court, like, not even the start of the game now. Like, I don't even know because I don't even turn the game on at the start. Do they show the national anthem on any of these playoff games now and people kneeling and everything else? I don't even know the answer.
Yeah, I'm not really sure either. Most of these games I've been just tuning in the second half or fourth quarter or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I do.
When the
basically.
action really gets good.
I mean, I'll check the score on my phone and be like, oh, how's that game going? But most NBA games, I mean, the dirty secret is, team gets up 15, team gets down 15, and really you just need to watch the fourth quarter to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point about the names on the back of the jersey, like OG Anunoby, who has made a couple of just massive shots for the Raptors this year in the playoffs, this series. Like, how many people know who that guy is, really?
A tiny percentage.
And then you see whatever statement he has on the back of his jersey, and I feel like people that are just like average sports fans are like, who is this guy? And then it takes them a minute to even realize who's making these huge shots for the Toronto Raptors. But for the NFL, as far as it's concerned, I mean, I think there's definitely going to be a lot of similar stuff going on tonight and throughout the entire season. So I guess just buckle up and get ready for it.
Yeah, like I don't know what names are going to be on the back of helmets in NFL stadiums, but some of them are going to be people who are liars, right? And stories that we know are untrue. Like somebody's probably going to have Michael Brown's name on the back of their helmet as if he's a victim of unrestrained police violence. A hands up, don't shoot was a lie. We know that because of the Obama Justice Department and the investigation they did in Ferguson. So everybody out there who's like, oh, Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot. I mean, NFL players did hands up, don't shoot celebrations after they scored touchdowns, which is ridiculous in and of itself. But they're going to have his name on the back of their helmets, and, I mean, that is a lie. Jacob Blake may well go to jail for felony sexual assault, and people are going to have potentially his name. I mean, they already did it with the Saints. Drew Brees. I was talking last night at dinner. I mean, Drew Brees may have everybody's name on his helmet. It might be I was out to dinner last night with Jason Whitlock. He was like, man, Drew Brees' helmet's going to be like an Ohio State Buckeye helmet back in the day. That dude is so shell-shocked after saying he's going to stand for the national anthem. Drew Brees is going to come out with the New Orleans Saints and have 60 different names of alleged police violence on his helmet. You're not even going to be able to see the Saints logo. He's going to have so many names on his helmet. But, I mean, the Jacob Blake thing, which kind of has disappeared all of a sudden because people found out that he had a weapon and he refused to comply with officer commands. And also the woman who called police said that he had felony sexually assaulted her and he was violating a trespass warrant. But, I mean, this is like people putting Ray Rice's name on their helmet after he was on video knocking out his fiance. I mean, it's crazy to me. Like, imagine if WNBA players had spelled out Ray Rice's name in a T-shirt. People would have been like, oh, my God, is this great? Like, people who wore Ray Rice jerseys were, like, the worst human beings on the planet after the Ray Rice video came out of him knocking out his fiance. Remember that? That was just, what was that, like 5-6 years ago that everybody in the NFL lost their minds over Ray Rice and said, oh, this guy's never allowed to. And look, I defended Ray Rice back in the day. I'm like, look, the guy made an awful decision, but it's not like he's the worst behaving person in the history of the NFL. He deserves a chance to come back and play if a team's willing to sign him. No team would sign him because suddenly domestic assault was the borderline between whether or not you could ever be signed to play football again. And look, I mean, I'm not defending Ray Rice, but the guy, in my opinion, deserved a right to make a living as a football player, even though he made a mistake, right? My position on the NFL for a long time has been, if you aren't in prison, you should be able to play football. I mean, I believed Michael Vick deserved a second chance. I understand some people are like, oh, I'll never give him a second chance after the dog fighting. Like, I believe in redemption. I believe in second chances if teams decide that your talent exceeds your problems. And I think really the takeaway from Ray Rice was most NFL teams did not believe Ray Rice had a lot of gas left in the tank. And when that video came out, they weren't going to be involved. But now we're going to have potentially Jacob Blake's name on helmets, and he's accused of felony sexual assault, which is worse, arguably, right? Worse, arguably. I mean, we'd have to put him in front of a jury and be able to let people hear the evidence. But what he's accused of is arguably much worse than what Ray Rice did on video. And yet NFL teams wouldn't allow Ray Rice to make a living ever again playing football, but they're going to put Jacob Blake's name on their helmet. I mean, I'm going to be thinking about that if I watch players. And if there are people that we're trying to turn into heroes through martyrdom, and the NFL is a part of that. And frankly, I don't think that a lot of these people are worthy of being turned into martyrs based on what they may have done, and certainly why police were there with Jacob Blake or what happened with Michael Brown. I mean, so yes, I think the NFL is going to have a big storyline surrounding the way that their off-the-field behavior could overshadow everything that happens on the court or on the field. What about you, Eddie? Like, I don't know how much NBA. I know you're primarily watching the NHL, but are you like me that even if the game is good in the NBA, like let's say you come in the Eastern or the Western Conference Finals. By the way, Clippers won last night easily, basically controlling that game throughout. There was no drama associated with it. But when like you flip on an NBA game or you watch highlights, do you immediately kind of notice the statements being made? I mean, that's why they're doing them. So hopefully everybody notices. But to me, it distracts in a big way from my enjoyment of the game.
Yeah, I've been lucky because I've been watching hockey mostly. I haven't really had to deal with much of it at all. I mean, they had a couple of statements and a couple of guys took
Except for the idiot decision by hockey to shut down for two days over the Jacob Blake incident, which now looks even more ridiculous the more and more evidence that comes out in that case.
Yeah, well, they would have been crushed by the media if they hadn't.
Yeah, who cares? I mean,
I
understand.
Obviously,
like,
they do.
Yeah, right. But I'm saying, like, that's the problem we're in right now is the 5% of people that are on the Twitter blue checkmark brigade, the 5% of people that are like, oh, my God, how in the world can they play hockey when, the Jacob Blake incident happened? Like, most people are like, because that's their job?
Like, yeah. Well, Gary Bettman came from the NBA, so he my thing is people are so afraid of what gets said on social media, and it's all just noise. Like, I mean, I can go into my Twitter account right now, and half the people at least listening are going to be like, thank God for everything that you say, and the other half are going to be like, you're the worst human being who's ever existed, and it's all just noise. Like, it doesn't have any impact. That's not going to change the way I feel about the world of sports or life. I'm going to say exactly what I think for 3 hours every morning. And it doesn't really matter to me what people think about what I think. I mean, like, you can react to it, but it's not like I'm walking up to you on the street like, what do you think about me? Do you like me? Do you like my show? Like, whatever. I don't care. Well, that's probably why the show does well. One of the problems is it's not just the imagery, but it's the commentary as well. I flipped over to one of the Houston games, and I swear to you, the first thing I heard out of the announcer's mouth was him going into some film that Russell Westbrook is making about some Tulsa race massacre. And I'm like, that was the first thing I heard. And I just flipped it off. I'm like, I just don't want to hear it. So it's going to be talked about as well, even if you try to, not.
Yeah, and the commercials. That's what's crazy to me is like every commercial is like some woke social justice warrior commercial. Like even during the commercial break, I'm like, oh, gee, like I got to get my remote and figure out if I can flip over to a baseball game. By the way, I did watch a lot of baseball last night. The Braves scored 29 runs. Yeah. That was kind of enjoyable. You're with me. Like it's impossible to escape.
Yeah, and I know for the game tonight, I'm gonna ask my wife just when they're about to kick off, tell me and I'll come in because I don't want to see any of the stuff that's going to go on beforehand.
I mean, they're playing the Black National Anthem. I mean, which is just, I mean, and are people going to kneel for the Black National Anthem? Or are they going to stand for the Black National Anthem and kneel for the U.S. National? I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. It is just such a ridiculous charade. And all of it, by the way, created by Colin Kaepernick, a dude who has never voted in his life. And also created by NBA players, only 20% of whom are actually registered to vote. It's like, hey, if you're going to lecture me on politics, maybe go into the voting booth once in your life for me. I don't think that's a crazy expectation. If you're going to take over sports and lecture me all the time about politics, just once in your life, actually have registered to vote. What about you, Roberto? Will you, I guess it's an interesting question. We'll ask Frank Isola this. What percentage of people are going to be like, I don't even want to turn it on until it's halfway through the first quarter because I like football, but I just don't want to be overwhelmed by all of the ridiculousness that is going to surround the football game.
Yeah, look, if you're going to get triggered by seeing the players kneel for the national anthem, don't turn on the game until the game starts. Well,
I mean, I think a lot of people are just not going to turn the game on, period.
Yeah, that's true. And then you're talking about the commercials. Like, whenever I have I never watch commercials. I just literally, during now, I'm switching back and forth from basketball to the NBA, and that's the way I get through the commercial.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes, at the end of a game scenario, everything, there's so many different timeouts that are taken, and, the process, they may pull up a commercial during the game, so, yes, I understand. In general, I tend to flip back and forth and just go to another sporting event the minute that a commercial starts. But I'm saying when you don't want to miss an inbounds play because there's, 2 seconds left and anything can happen, you might miss it if you flip over to a different channel. So that's when I typically leave the television on. And the whole thing is just it's a ridiculous woke overreach.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me because I just don't care about what the players have to say. It's out of sight, out of mind for me. It really doesn't bother me.
When we come back, we'll be joined by Frank Isola at the Frank Isola on Twitter. This is Outkick the Coverage on Fox Sports Radio.